Carson Beck. Things have not gone well for Carson of late. He has had interception issues. He has had holding the ball too long issues. And part of it, I think, is not necessarily all him. I think Georgia lacks the explosive weapons on offense that they've had in previous years. But he goes into this game against Tennessee, which is a very, very good defense, has an excellent pass rush, pretty similar in profile to what he just played against Ole Miss. And he's got to have one of his better games. We talked about Nico Iamaleava and his situation earlier, but I'm looking at this independently because remember, when we picked the game on Monday, one thing I said is just take the under because I'm not sure either of these offenses is going to be very good. Carson Beck has got to be better than he has been for Georgia to win this game. Let's look at his Prize Picks number this week. Prize Picks, best daily fantasy game in America. Use the code Staples, play $5, get $50 instantly. So his number this week at Prize Picks is 261.5 yards for passing. You decide if it's going to be less than that or more than that. That's how you pick that square. You pick at least 2 squares. The more squares you pick, the higher the potential payout. So I don't think Carson Beck needs to have more than 261.5 passing yards to win this game. I think if he even gets near this number, Georgia's in pretty good shape because I think this game is going to be a slog.
Yeah, I'm with you because Tennessee's offense isn't really explosive. So, I do think that they could win a game 17-14 where he throws for 160 yards. I'm with you 100% on that front. Now, focusing
the only way I would say the only way this goes more than, and we talked about this last week with Ole Miss, is if they get roped into a shootout. Like suddenly Tennessee is hitting those deep balls that they have not been able to connect on all season. But I think if that were to happen, if Tennessee's offense is clicking the way Ole Miss's offense was clicking last week, I think it's the same game as last week. I think more likely Georgia's defense probably terrorizes Tennessee's offense, and we see the defense is just getting thrown back on the field.
Do you think that Georgia could exist in a shootout right now? Do you think that against Tennessee's defense? If Carson, you did an interesting thought on one of the Prize Picks videos last week, I think, of it's actually maybe a bad sign if you hit your number.
It was Carson Beck. It was the same one.
Yeah. And, he threw for 186 yards against Ole Miss. And I don't recall, we were both there. Do you recall a single explosive pass play in that entire game? I don't even remember.
No, they're very much underneath and over the, a lot of underneath, and Ole Miss intentionally kept everything in front of them. It's kind of the way that Georgia has always defended teams like Tennessee and teams like Ole Miss, where they keep everything in front of them. Now, Ole Miss, in this particular case, was hitting underneath routes and turning them into bigger gains, which I don't think Georgia's capable of against Tennessee's defense. And I'm not sure Tennessee's capable of against Georgia's defense. So I just think this is going to be an absolute grind. I don't have a lot of faith in Georgia's run game, especially after seeing it up close and personal against an elite defensive line, which Tennessee also has. Tennessee and Ole Miss's defensive profiles are very similar. They don't run the same defense, but personnel-wise, it feels very similar.
Absolutely. And I have a hard time, for me, the play here is less than.
I think so too. I think there's two scenarios. There's 3 scenarios in this game. One of them actually is a positive for Georgia, where it's still less than, because I think it's a slog of a game. Both teams just try to control it on the ground, or take a lead and suck possessions out of the game and control clock. So in that case, Georgia's winning a low-scoring game. He's probably not throwing enough to get to 261.5. So that's one. Another is they just get dominated. He doesn't play very well. It's less than. The more than is if Tennessee scores some and Georgia's got to play catch up, which is you saw in the Florida game. The Florida game, he threw 3 interceptions. He threw for 300 yards, but a lot of that was having to throw their way back because Florida was still in the game. I mean, that game was tied in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. Who do you think has a better pass rush? Tennessee or Ole Miss?
I think Tennessee does.
Like, isn't that a scary proposition? Like,
Well,
I
and
cannot
that's what
believe that people are just assuming that Georgia's going to win this game. There are a lot of
because
those.
people are going back to 2 years ago and saying, well, you guys all said Tennessee would win 2 years ago and Georgia just demolished them. Well, that was a Georgia team that won the national championship. And last I checked, Brock Bowers is not coming back to run routes. Todd Monken's not coming back to call plays. And Stetson Bennett's not coming back to throw the ball.
Yeah.
And Tennessee's defense is better than it was in 2022.
Yeah. I think that it helps that it's at home.
It does. It does. And here's another interesting stat. This is Arthur emailed me this one and pointed this out, and I thought it was really interesting. Georgia currently has played more top 25 opponents on the road than it has played home games. So their schedule has been obscenely hard. It may be that, yes, being at home makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and also, too, playing Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas in a pretty spunky Auburn team at times in a 6-week period just caught up with them. You know, like, that's the thing about college football, too. It's like you jump to all these conclusions, and sometimes what you get from a week-to-week situation is just not the same thing. You know, and, you know, you'll see Georgia come out and just be monsters on Saturday, and you'll be like, holy crap, where the hell was this, you know, last week? But I'm losing faith in that.
Their offense doesn't have to be the monster. Like against Texas, it wasn't. The defense was. And that's good enough. So if the Georgia defense does what it did against Texas, and this goes back to the Carson Beck less than thing, if the Georgia defense does what it did against Texas, Georgia can win the game comfortably without the offense being particularly great.
Yep. But I think we're both in agreement here on what to do on Prize Picks.
Yes, I feel like less than is the play here just because of the quality of Tennessee's defense and the way the game probably has to go for Georgia to win it. So in terms of if I'm strategizing, if I come up with a game plan, you know, I'm not planning to come out and throw the ball over the yard. Now, look, if Georgia starts hitting deep balls, then by all means, you know, we're wrong, but we haven't seen it all season. So I don't expect to see it against one of the better defenses that they've played.
Yeah.